every single part of the piece was broken. Most teams are not really managing it. They're just navigating through it. The founders hold all the money in a wallet that only they control, because if your founder loses access to that wallet, the team is effectively dead. The irony of the entire thing is that, okay, it's a public ledger, but there's no actual insight on that ledger.
This is a pervasive problem that a lot of people are not managing correctly. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Billion podcast. I'm here back in the seat after a really hectic conference session. You'll see some of our other recordings coming up very soon from the Solana Crossroads conference with some really cool interviews with some builders. But I'm here today with a guy who we've been in touch for actually not too long, maybe the last couple of months, Tahem from Mesha. And we're going to be talking a little bit about recurring payments and how that's really working in web3, literally just paying people. And how does that work? It's a pretty important thing, right? If we're going to build stuff in web3, we need people to literally do it. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And we can get into it.
Yeah, man. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Well, look, maybe it's good to start with a little bit of an intro about what is Mesha. And I believe the full URL is mesha.club, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Awesome. So when I first went there, actually, the journey started on Twitter, where I was like, paying people is really hard. And it literally takes me 2 hours to do like payroll or anything like that. And I assume the problem is kind of the same for many Web3 teams, right? Like if the people that are working on Web3, you're just getting coins or, there's no bank accounts involved. What about having some sort of system that can automate a lot of those payments, can track it? A lot of these things exist in the Web2 world, but not so much in the Web3 world. So I reached out on Twitter. I found Mesha and you guys got in touch as well, which was super awesome. And you've been really receptive with how things and building stuff out, which we can get into soon. But maybe a little bit of background, like how did Mesha start and what was the problem that you guys were setting out to solve?
Yeah, of course. So it's been an interesting journey for us. Just for some background, this is my second startup. I had started a very different startup before this. It was an edtech startup. We scaled that up, and after selling it, I was looking for my next, journey. And while my co-founder and I were like exploring ideas, we had been involved in crypto back in the day, and it was not even called Web3 at that point. So we were looking at different things.
You know what? I think the word Web3 has helped like make things more easier for people to digest, perhaps. Because remember back in the day, it was like, oh, it's all crypto, and then people were like, oh, is it just coins? That's it? But no, it's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think the best part of the term, at least, has been the fact that it just shows you that there's other things outside of just the token itself that you can do. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey in that sense. And so when we were starting to look at the space, we were like, talking to founders and other people who were, in it on a day-to-day basis. And one of the interesting challenges that we came across was the fact that just every single part of the piece was like broken. And as founders ourselves, we really struggled with all our on-chain payments and everything from like just even knowing what the hell is going on with your account, right? Like the irony of the entire thing is that, okay, it's a public ledger, but there's no actual insight on that ledger, right? I have no idea who this wallet address is. I can't remember like all these like numbers. I just need to know that I've paid George. I can't remember all this stuff. And so the irony of this thing was that, you needed a bit of for lack of a better word, a Web2 layer as well on top of the usability experience so that you can just like make sense of like, what's going on. So we, went deeper into that. And then that's really where we discovered that teams were just wasting a lot of time. You mentioned, you spent hours on it. And that was kind of like a tragedy, right? Because Web3 is such an exciting development where like all trying to do like really interesting and cool things. And there's so many teams out there who are like really pushing the envelope in terms of like innovation. And then they waste hours every week on operations, which like you don't get into the space to like do admin work. Like that's not the pitch,
I'm allergic to admin work. Like it's
exactly.
Just the
Every
bane
founder
of my
is.
existence.
Yeah, no one wants to do it. And there's a reason for it, right? Like it's not theoretically productive work. It's just like, keeping the lights on in some ways. And so we realized like it was a bit of a tragedy, right? Because you're wasting time on this. And like, just like, your podcast is like named, we fundamentally believe that like to get to the next billion users, there are a bunch of teams who can like do it. And what we want to do is help enable them to do it by like letting them focus on building rather than wasting time on payroll, accounting, treasury management, just every single thing. Like, now I need to off ramp to pay the AWS bill. Like that should not be a multi-hour, very expensive, multiple days of waiting kind of like event. You should just be able to pay for it. And so you can focus on building. And so that's really how Mesha came about. And so we've been working on it for about a year plus. The original product that first rolled out was an Ethereum native product where it was just to help you, make sense of like what's actually happening in your multi-sig wallet. And using that as a base layer, we then started building our next features and all. And basically, in a nutshell, what we do is we enable teams to manage all their financial operations. Either it's on-chain or even off-chain, actually. And the goal is really just to save you a lot of time and money. So on average, teams can save 10 to 15 hours of admin work a month, and about 1.5 to 2% on like expenses as well. And especially in a bear market, that's super helpful if you can like save a lot of money, extends your runway, helps you focus on building. But that's really what we're building.
Absolutely. And maybe it's worth putting into context, how are teams currently managing their treasury? Because one of the things is, you see all of these projects launching, these protocols, they go and raise some money, or they're an NFT thing and they have a recurring inflow of money coming in. And often people are a little bit cagey on how they manage that, but really it's all on chain. So like our teams, is there literally just a wallet somewhere and most teams are just paying the rest of their team from some guy's wallet, which could just be a Google Chrome extension? Like that doesn't sound like the best way to be managing things. Or like, how does it currently work? I mean, I'm sure we're not the exception, but I've spoken to other people as well where it's like there is some sort of money somewhere which these teams have, and sometimes they're like yield farming with it, or sometimes it just sits there, sometimes it's in a hardware wallet, sometimes it's in like some self-custody thing. Sometimes it's in like some custodian who's managing it. But yeah, I mean, from you guys' experience, like how are people currently sort of going about managing their treasury?
I think you actually said it. Most teams are not really managing it. They're just navigating through it. Our biggest concern when we speak to a lot of teams are that the founders hold all the money in a wallet that only they control, which is just the biggest risk you can have as a team, because if your founder loses access to that wallet, the team is effectively dead at that moment. So that's the first thing we basically push for, is actually multi-sig self-custody. We work with Squads, which is like the leading multi-sig player in Solana, and we really push for from just a risk management perspective. But that's been like what our experience has been, that either teams are using multi-sigs or then they're actually using their own personal wallet, which is like, I cannot stress enough, like they should just not be doing this at all. But otherwise they're using a multi-sig. Usually if it's a startup, then it's the founders who are using it. If it's a DAO, of course, like there's a whole level of complexity of how they've arranged around the permissions and the signing authorities on the wallet. And normally what we see with the multi-sig teams is if you've managed to learn about a multi-sig and you've opted into this, you've at least understood how a multi-sig works. So you understand the fact that like there's multiple people who need to sign it, and you understand the trade-off that comes with it. So then you started optimizing for that either with multiple wallets, so that you can have like one for operations, which is a bit more flexible in terms of how many people need to sign each transaction. And then you hold most of your treasury in a wallet which requires unanimous voting or a majority of people to sign the transaction. So we see that with a lot of teams who've actually like understood what a multi-sig is. But if you've not understood what a multi-sig is, 100% of your funds are held in one single wallet. It's either in your Phantom wallet. If you're an ETH, like their founders holding like multi-million treasuries in a MetaMask, which they should not be doing. And the next step that they do is that they just largely use it for payments. So on the day that they either have to pay a vendor, or if it's payroll date on the 1st, for example, they just like spin up those payments and they just send it out in a very inefficient manner. They just have like a Google spreadsheet. They take like, each wallet address and they send it. And that becomes a time-consuming affair. But the bigger issue, which a lot of teams miss, is that's also a terrible way to just manage like a business, right? Because at a certain point, you're trying to scale up that business and you need to know what's happening with the business. You need to understand insights, compliance. If you're in a country with tax, you need to have all this data, and you don't want to like be caught 1 year later on tax day, like being like, oh, now I need to do this. So that's really where even just moving to more effective expense management and like other software can help you with that, rather than just using your own personal wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point that you mentioned there about multi-sigs is super important for a lot of teams, right? Like, and was this a focus for you guys, like when you first started in Ethereum land? Because I think it's Gnosis, right? Which was the sort of go-to multi-sig for EVM stuff. So is that what you guys started with? And then you're kind of like, if we were to branch out to other chains, like it has to be with some robust multi-sig infrastructure. And we've had Squads on the podcast before. It's a great product. Everyone should check it out. But was this like a requirement for you guys, or maybe going forward, like multi-sig is a critical sort of part of, what you see as necessary when, connecting that to Mesha and so on?
Yeah, for sure. So when we started on Ethereum, it was Gnosis. How we looked at it was both a very simplistic way of doing things as well as a slightly more like philosophical way. So simplistic way was we were like, well, this is a no-brainer. This is the way it should be. So this is what we're going to do. So we really like just, integrated with Gnosis on that side. But from a philosophical perspective, we push for self-custody anyways. The reasoning for that is the fact that like if we're in the space, we should adopt what the space can do. And self-custody with the multi-sig is something that's like not possible really in the fiat world. And it's like one of the best innovations you have in web3. And so we say that we try to push for that to increase the adoption. So even like teams who come to us and they've not done it, we are like sometimes their first point of contact with the multi-sig. And then once they see it, they're like, oh, this is like a light bulb moment. So we really believe like that's the core part of what we're doing, at least, is ensuring that like this is the best practice that we want to push forward. And then when we entered Solana, that was exactly what you said. We said, look, we are built around this concept that self-custody is critical, as well as the fact that you need a multi-sig experience. And so that's how we reached to Squads, because, when we enter a chain, we're not looking to become the multi-sig creator on that chain. We're looking to work with a team who have done the battle testing. They're leading that chain. And so that also sometimes limits us from like which chains we enter. And we're okay then not being like on a certain chain on like day one, until the chain itself has developed enough like, self-custody multi-sig wallets.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So at the end of the day, as you say, not building your own kind of thing, right? Because otherwise then you're in the multi-sig business, and that's like a completely different problem set to be solving for, as opposed to providing a product that teams can use for payroll or something like that. If you had to start from scratch and build your own multi-sig, it's like, okay, man, well, now you're out there with a whole bunch of other products and you got to focus on that, and that might detract from sort of the payroll sides of things. So you guys don't have custody at any time, right? It's like you're the layer on top of existing multi-sigs. Am I correct in saying how that works? So there's that. And also maybe we can talk a little bit about the actual product. Like, let's say I connect my multi-sig. What can I do? And how does that look? And how does that feel and work?
Yeah, of course. So exactly what you said, we're not looking to like be building our own multi-sigs. Our expertise lies on that next step, which is helping you on the operation side of things. And they're like super strong teams. Squads and then Gnosis are just very strong teams, and we like have full trust in
they're amazing
in what they're building. And so we let them handle like what is actually a much more complex issue than what we can handle. How the product looks, we are built on top of these multi-sigs. So if you're on Solana, for example, you can either spin up a squads using us, or you can import your existing squads. And then after that, that's where we really come in from a value creation perspective. So what that looks like is, one, it's a super easy UI. You can understand what's going on, what's coming in and what's coming out of your wallet. And then we enable things such as payroll. Our flagship product is also our corporate card product. So the corporate card product, for example, lets you spend in fiat around the world, and then you just pay us back in crypto. So it becomes a off-ramp product for many teams.
That's useful.
It's super useful.
I think that's in and of itself is something that's quite unique, really. Because often, especially if you're a DAO and you need to, pay for some event somewhere, some event host place is not going to just accept your magical internet coins. Someone has to pay at the end of the day, and often there's some personal responsibility for someone in the DAO to go and do that. So there's like a card, and you can connect that to the multi-sig, and it just works, right?
Exactly. It works as simply as that. You sign up, and then you can just issue MasterCard corporate cards to basically either your team, your DAO members. And what's currently happening, as you said, was that you are using your personal card and then getting reimbursed by the DAO or your company, which is not an effective way of doing this. And so now instead, the company or the DAO issues the card in its own name. And then at the end of the month, you just pay us back in stable coins. So it's a really easy way to pay for flight tickets, AWS bills, coffee at if you're going for a conference, you can just pay for coffee now. You don't have to save the receipt and then send it to the founder being like, hey, I ran up a bill of $9. Can you transfer it to me?
Yeah.
So all these things just get super simplified. And again, it just helps teams just focus on what they actually need to do rather than chasing DAO members for reimbursement forms.
Yeah, literally everyone has this problem. Even if people are not talking about it, this is a pervasive thing that maybe more people should be talking about, because you've got these massive conferences and things where everyone goes to, but that means flight booking, that means, as you say, coffees, that means taxis or whatever it is. And having just come from a conference literally yesterday, I can absolutely attest to this. So also, the product is building on top of what already exists there. Maybe the user base from other products like Gnosis and Squads, you can sort of utilize a lot of that to kickstart things. But I always like to talk to founders and entrepreneurs in the space. Like you said, you've been through multiple startups. Like, how is user acquisition working for you guys, especially in a bear market, right? A lot of things are giga-wrecked at the moment, but how are you guys going about building? Like, is it just about identifying teams in the space that are still doing stuff? Do you have any particular focus? Like, how does BD, I guess, work for you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. BD in Web3 is an interesting concept. It's still very much relationship based, a lot of word of mouth. Like, you can't run ads, the space is not big enough. So it's an interesting challenge for us. So how we look at BD is one, just brand building. So Twitter is obviously the core around which you build a brand in Web3. And that helps us with people talking about the product, getting the word out. And usually what ends up happening is every single person who signs up for the product ends up referring at least one other customer, just because it's still that space, as you said, that every single person needs it. So we're just still building the brand around it. The bear market has been an interesting experience where from an internal perspective, it's just, we just have to be super ruthless and super focused. And in terms of prioritization of features, bull markets, you can get a bit fat in terms of what you're looking to build. So this has really helped us in that sense. And then on the BD side, obviously it just again means being very ROI focused, not splurging on a conference, which might get you only 5 customers. There's no ROI there. And also then the value proposition really changes. So in a bull market, our two core value propositions are saving time and saving money. So in a bull market, saving time is the thing that we lean on. And then in a bear market, it's saving money. So if you're saving 1.5 to 2% every year, that's a fundamental change to your entire runway for a lot of these teams, especially if they're early stage. So that's really where we come in and we can really help you there. But I think from our end, at least, that's how we've seen most teams. And because from a pricing perspective, we're free, that also helps in a bear market that we're not really charging you for anything.
Yeah, and I think it's all about, certainly in times like this, it's about onboarding the maximum number of teams possible, right? And so I guess, what are some of the examples of teams that are using it? Like at Step, we're using Mesha, which is awesome. And we have a team all over the world that we need to do payments for. And certainly the Web3 nativeness of your product is super useful. And as you say, we actually got connected by referral. So I think that also makes sense. But do you DAOs, I guess you're working with some of those? Is it other payment startups or really just anyone? Or what also is the most intriguing product that you see that teams are interested in? Is it the card? Is it the payroll? Is it a transaction reporting or something like that? What do you see as some of the interesting things that, hey, if we tweak a little bit more of this, maybe it onboards a lot more users and we can bootstrap even more?
Yeah, of course. So I think in terms of the product that's most intriguing, you actually listed it in the exact order that people come to us for. So it's the cards, then payroll, and then the transaction cleanup, as we call it. Cards is right now the primary focus. I think so many people have just been burned over the last 6 to 8 months, trying to handle their own expenses and all. And so when we come and we say, hey, you can just, run it super efficiently, they get super excited. One part that, I forgot to highlight is that, especially when you're doing that personal card, there's a centralized exchange off-ramp fee, so that teams end up spending 2 to 3% in fees as well. You got to wire someone funds. It becomes a nightmare for a lot of this teams for that sense. In terms of customers who are using us, yeah, as you said, you guys use us. We have in Solana, Orca is also using us. And in ETH, we have teams like Lido Finance and Coordinate and 6529 also using us. So we have an interesting variety of slightly famous brands, but a lot of early stage teams also use us who are doing really exciting work. And I think that's also where we really like our job in this space, is that we just get to interact with these really cool teams and they're doing some amazing work, and just hoping that our support of them leads to that innovation that they're promising is super exciting from our end. So we get to see a bunch of teams and they're doing so many interesting things either in the NFT space or in payments. So it's an exciting thing there. But I would say in some ways, one of our core customers is ourselves. So we dog food everything. Every single problem that our customers face, we face as well as an on-chain team. So that really helps when we're trying to solve for a problem. Is look, this is not working for us. This is for sure not going to work for everyone else, off-ramp or anything really. So that's super helpful from our end as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you got to use your own product to, every day, literally, to get the right, idea of how it should work for the actual customer. So we're in April now. So 2023, April, we're getting towards the halfway point. We had the collapse of FTX and all of this nonsense, and last year was a bit of a wild ride, but I think things are stabilizing a little bit now. So what's the plan ongoing for the rest of this year? What are you guys focusing on? How are you going to build the product, build the team, build customer base? What are you guys looking forward to? Yeah, how are you approaching the rest of this year? What's the plan going forward?
Yeah, I think the year is stabilized, which is nice. It's been a very chaotic 6 months of really shitty news every day.
Yeah.
But it's been good.
We're just chilling now. It's good.
Yeah. Now, no news is good news at this point. But how we look at the rest of the year is a couple of different ways. One is we have a bunch of product and features coming out. We're spending a lot of time on two core areas. So one is very much around the fiat world as well. Teams need, so we have a corporate card product. That's our first off-ramp product. The second part is global payouts. So either from a payroll perspective or a bill payment perspective, that you can, send in USDC and have a vendor or employee receive payments in INR, USD, euros, Japanese yen, whatever currency it is. And that's really where we spend a lot of time and energy on a product side, just being even if you're on chain, you should not have to figure out what needs to be done to pay someone in a different currency, either in a cryptocurrency or just a fiat currency. So we really care about how do we make that a seamless experience. So we're pushing out a bunch of things on the off-ramp there. The second part is also teams. This year, we fundamentally believe, especially after the FTX fiasco, that compliance is going to become a huge issue as well. So far, Web3 teams have been moving money from one wallet to another wallet without realizing these are actual fund transfer flows between one country and another country. And so we're basically what we call multi-entity support, where you can be look, this wallet is linked to the DAO holding company in the Cayman Islands, and this is the operating company in Singapore. So when you move the money, you should be compliant, or at least know. So if someone comes knocking, you don't get caught on the back foot. And so we're really trying to help teams be a bit more proactive in this. It sounds very anti-Web3, I know, but especially this year, we feel the tax officers and all the compliance is going to be a really important part.
I think it's about providing the tools, right? As long as the tools
we don't give
there.
any advice. We're just look, just be ready, have everything, know what's going on. That's what we really care about. So that's on the product side. And then on the team side, we're growing. We're a team of 15 people. We're always looking for people who can join us in terms of helping with the product, on the BD side, marketing side, any side really at this point. And that's really what we're focused on in terms of this year from a customer acquisition perspective is really just ensuring that we deliver the promise that we have, and then just going out to all the people who need it and giving them the product so they can use it. And that's really where we spend the rest of the year at least.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I love to hear it. So as one of your customers, I would recommend that everyone go and check it out, especially Web3 teams. We speak to a lot of people. We have to integrate a lot of the teams for our data and dashboards and stuff. And I think that this is a pervasive problem that a lot of people are perhaps either not thinking about or just not managing correctly. And as they scale, especially if people are going and talking to VCs with their team and yeah, we're going to scale and we're going to do this and that. It's okay, but are you actually going to scale this side of the business? Or, a year later, you're going to end up and you're going to have, as you say, some sort of massive problem of having no idea which payments are going where and being able to prove it either to investors or, taxes or accounting or whatever it is. So definitely go and check out the product. But where should people go to find out more about Mesha? Websites, blogs, Twitter? What's the best way to reach out?
Two easy ways. One is our website, which is mesha.club, or on Twitter, which is just @mesha.club. And you can also just DM me on Twitter. We're super easy to access, and we're always open to chat. We're open to chat if you just need help with understanding your finances. We just provide consulting like that as well. We're super available 24/7 basically. So whenever you guys want to chat, you can reach out.
Yeah, look, I can attest to that as well. Tahem has been a Giga Chad that's always available to be messaging and chat. So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And go and check out some of those links. We'll put them all down in the description as well, especially for Web3 teams. But yeah, look, thanks for being on the podcast today, and all the best for the rest of this year.
Thanks so much, George. Really enjoyed being on here.
Cheers. Bye-bye.